why not Calgary? The skiing and the cycling. Tremendous amounts of talent. Chat GPT, that was pretty cool. Dilution. Law firm paywall, 1,700 clients in this practice. Not sustainable for us not to do. Really great advice. Always be more than just a lawyer.
Michael, thank you so much for joining the show. Welcome aboard Between Meetings.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for having me.
Just for the record, we had to postpone this conversation one time because of the really cold weather. And actually I was tempting to keep it running because when it comes to cold weather and conversation about innovation and tech, that sounds like Calgary, that sounds like Alberta.
Yep.
That might be a conversation for the different time, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking actually how the weather and geographical position of the city, what kind of impact it has actually on the startup ecosystem. Yeah, but we'll come back to that topic a little bit later.
It's a good one.
You're super active in the community. You're super active on LinkedIn. You've been talking, at different events. So probably we're not going to dive deep into the background. That's going to be overlap with other events and podcast. But I'm really, really curious to know, how did you end up not becoming another boring lawyer?
Yeah, fair enough. So I got some really great advice when I was in my last year of law school. It was a lawyer who was a practitioner at the time on Bay Street. And he said in the very last class, and it's maybe one of the things I remember for better or worse from all of law school, which was always be more than just a lawyer. Always be more than your career. And I kind of really spent a bunch of time thinking about that, and it partly because it just really resonated with me. And I took it to heart. And so I never really kind of think about myself as a lawyer. I don't aspire to be just a lawyer. I don't lead with like, that's who I am when I talk to people. That frankly is kind of irrelevant to me. And so I've maybe always run away from this concept that I am a lawyer in a way, as odd as that sounds, given that that's effectively what I do for my living. But it's born out of this idea that people should be multifaceted. They should be more than just what their job is. And they should hopefully aspire to be something that is kind of just like more than them and part of something else. And so for me, I'm first and foremost a father of two awesome little girls. I'm a skier. I'm a cyclist. I'm a bit of a geek. I play some video games here and there. And I just like to do things outside of law. And, I spend enough time during my day doing legal stuff, and so I've checked that box in terms of doing a lot of it, but I like to think that I'm more than that. And I think beyond all those other things, I'm also part of a community here in Calgary, part of an ecosystem. And so from my perspective, all of that's really important, and it doesn't make me just the kind of like 9 to 5, okay, you need a document, here's your document, I'll wait till I hear from you again kind of person. I like to be proactive. I like to engage with clients. I like to kind of understand who they are and know them even outside of the work context. And I like to do things outside of work too. So I do a lot in my life to make sure I'm not just the kind of average lawyer, which is by no means meant to like discredit the profession. There's, plenty of great people out there, but I think especially in this industry, there's kind of a value and importance on thinking of yourself as more than just kind of the person who receives requests and provides an output. What this community needs is kind of activism almost, in a sense. And so I think it requires people who fundamentally see themselves as more than just like, my job is X, and so I'm just gonna like focus on that. I think that there's, a much broader role that we can serve. And I mean, law is what I do, but it's a tool that I use to ultimately, hopefully at least, at the end of my career at some point, be viewed as someone who's kind of been a community builder, an ecosystem supporter. And that's really what I view my role as. Law is the way I contribute to that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think you're successfully conveying that message, because the first time I saw you, you were wearing sneakers, right? A t-shirt.
Yeah.
And the speech that you gave about actually legal stuff was not boring at all, right?
Yeah.
It was engaging. People
Thank you.
were taking notes, listening, and they were excited about actually to learn about it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So whenever I prepare for the interview, I usually look at the LinkedIn title.
Yeah.
So it has the limited number of characters, right? And that means people usually put the most important thing there, right? And it's quite interesting to check. So one of them is about the boring lawyer, right, for you, and the second one is you already mentioned that you're very active in the ecosystem. So you're a tech startup hype man, right? Which is pretty cool. I'm just curious, where does that passion for startups, entrepreneurship, innovation come from? And if you ever thought about building your own tech company in the future?
Ooh, yeah, good question. Yeah, so I would say my passion. So I've just to level set. I've been doing this since I was a student way back when. So working in the tech and venture space is the only thing I've ever known as a lawyer. I've never done, oil and gas work, kind of the brick and mortar corporate type work. And not to say that there's, that it's not interesting to do that stuff. It's just never something I've really done. So I've always been working with tech companies. I've always been working with investors that invest in tech companies. And I kind of luckily fell into it, I think, because I'd always had an interest in technology, and I still do, on many different fronts. And I was lucky enough to start at a firm based out of Ottawa, which is called the Large Weinstein. And I remember when I was there for interviews as a summer student, I got to meet this client, and it was this guy wearing a bike helmet, t-shirt, and shorts, and talking to him a little bit. He was there, by the way, to sign a bunch of paperwork. He was selling his business to I think it was Apple. And talking to him a little bit more, this guy is 15 years old, and he's there with his mother selling this business for about $2 million. And I was like, this is like some crazy, weird world that I have never even experienced or knew existed, that this could happen. I always imagined, stereotypically the person doing some M&A deal is this like older executive or whatever, who's kind of, spent a bunch of time near the end of their career having, kind of the culmination of their career was selling this business. And here's this like younger guy selling this company for, I would have thought a couple $100 was a lot of money at that age. And this guy was, selling a business which he owned entirely for $2 million. And so I kind of was really hooked on just how accessible the industry was for people like particularly, you see some guy 15 years old selling a business like that. It's not something that I would expect to see, as I mentioned. And I was just kind of hooked on that element and kind of marrying, I was interested in business. I was really interested in technology. And this seemed like just the perfect mix for me, where I obviously had an interest in law and pursuing a legal career. And then I think the passion started there, but I think it took on a whole new character when I came to Alberta, because part of my drive and reason for wanting to move here, we moved from Toronto. Part of the reason why we moved here was to help support the build out of Osler's emerging and high growth companies group practice here. And we had worked in Alberta for some time. As you may know, we do like Neo's work and Siemens work in Autobotics and a bunch of others, Helsum, Purpose Med, shout out to them, I'm wearing their hat right now. We hadn't worked with a lot of the earlier stage companies in Alberta like we had, where we had actual physical presence for our group, like in Toronto and Vancouver and in Montreal. And so, coming here and seeing this kind of awesome building project that was going on in the ecosystem, that just brought on a whole new dimension of my passion for the tech space and supporting it, because there was just so much opportunity to contribute. And I use that word deliberately. It's like, I know we run a business as lawyers. My objective here, and I think that's just a byproduct, hopefully, of doing our job correctly, but the byproduct is a successful, profitable business. The reason though is contribution. And that is really my passion now at this point in my life in terms of what I'm doing, and that's the thing that really kind of keeps me going every day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Osler, like many other big law firms, tend to work probably with the bigger corporations. However, startup ecosystem is not unfamiliar to Osler. And actually, you have really great packages for those startups to support them at their early stages, right? When they're kicking off the startup journeys. Can you talk a little bit more about those packages?
Yeah, sure.
And in your opinion, how sustainable is this approach?
Yeah, good question. So the package that Osler offers is a flat 5K fee. And basically what it does is get you, let's use the example of a day one founder who's saying, hey, we need to incorporate a business. We're going to start going after this thing. That 5K fee gets you incorporated, gets your share structure set up properly, gets kind of CVCA-based shareholder agreements in place, gets an equity incentive plan in place, gets, founder vesting arrangements, bylaws, board constituted, deals with kind of IP ownership and chain of title. And then during the duration of that package, because we defer the 5K until 100K in commercial revenue or 6 months, usually it ends up being 6 months, and so during that time of the package, we provide basically free ad hoc legal advice, get people access to employment templates as well, contractor and advisor templates. Yeah, and the whole objective is get these clients fully ramped up to the point where they're starting to achieve some success and some validation of the product and the customer fit, market fit, and they're basically ready to turn on a data room to an investor at any moment. Have that investor look at the data room and say, yeah, this is an Osler client. We've seen this type of stuff 1,000 times before. Totally makes sense to us. Move on back to the business opportunity diligence. And part of the important point there, as a firm, we do more work in the space than any other law firm in this country, any other service provider. And so we have over the years, and we're also the first firm to start doing this type of package, way back in probably 2010 or before. And because we do so much work in this space, we're able to really understand, when we think about that package and what's included, what truly is market, what are investors going to accept, what are they not, what's reasonable, and with a view to actually making sure that we've put a lot of thought into, how we're actually going to set these companies up in a way that really positions them for success, not just from a Canadian VC perspective, but also from a US and abroad perspective, because most of those are clients. We're assuming they're either going to sell into the US at some point or raise capital in the US. And so it's really important for our perspective, or from our perspective, that we take that kind of legal friction out of the mix for them. So that's the package. And then, you asked a good question about sustainability. I think our view, and I know my partners in the group would have the same view, is that it's actually not sustainable for us not to do the thing we do. The reality is there's no startup in the world and on day one that can afford the legal fees associated with legal advice from what's ultimately a Bay Street headquartered law firm. Like Osler or like any other law firm, any kind of national law firm, legal fees are not insignificant. And that's something that we're acutely aware of for our clients. We've got about 1,700 clients in this practice, which is, I would say probably more than anyone else out there in this country. And we've done that by, making sure that we're truly partners with the clients that we work with in those early days. And partnership doesn't necessarily mean us investing in these clients, obviously, but partnership means things like, the EHG package is obviously a pretty significant haircut on what our fees would typically be supporting these companies in the early days when I outlined kind of what I just did. But it's an important investment for us in the future of our relationship with these clients. It's important to help build trust with these clients so that they kind of have a bit of a safe legal space, if that makes sense, to ask the questions, to get the support without worrying about the surprise bill coming at them out of nowhere, without worrying about, what a kind of routine task is going to cost, and just to remove the kind of kind of effectively like, law firm paywall that sometimes exists for people, because at the end of the day, we've got more experience in the space than any other firm doing this, because of the volume that we do on a annual basis of financings, M&A, et cetera. And so that is our competitive edge. It would be extremely unfortunate if we didn't set our business up in a way that basically limited clients from getting the benefit of that.
Was both on the grounds and working with lots of startups over the past few years.
Yeah.
What are the common mistakes you see that startups make, and what are the consequences?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest one is probably the feeling sometimes that founders have of like having to go it alone, and not taking the time to really get the right advice on things. And I'm really careful about saying that, because it's easy for me as the one who charges fees to say, hey, you should get advice on these things. But the reality is, like, I spend months before formally engaging with clients just chatting about their business and how to think about things, and really just building goodwill and just trying to add value before I ask for any kind of formality in relationship. And so I think it's just important to know that talking to a lawyer or an accountant or whatever shouldn't always be a question of like, okay, well, can I or can I not afford it? You should seek out those people who are truly invested in building something with you and in the community they operate in, and just take the time to ask the 5-minute question about, hey, I'm doing this. Does this even make sense? Like, I'm not asking you to review something. I'm not asking you to draft anything, but this is my perspective on what I'm doing, and does it track? And so I think the common mistake is thinking, I can't ask anyone about this. It's, it's going to cost too much, so I'm not even going to bother. And then finding out later that you've kind of broken your company and you need to, do a bunch of work to kind of right the ship. That's definitely a big one. The other thing I would say is not being thoughtful about dilution. And I think, especially coming out of COVID, a lot of companies were in some respects kind of cash starved, and the investment landscape changed pretty dramatically through 2022 and then into 2023. And I think the mistake sometimes that I see is that companies will give up far too much equity in exchange for early stage investment. And I always make a point, whether it's investment, in a equity round, investment through a convertible note, or investment through a SAFE, to really take time to work through what the economics of that investment are, what they mean for the long term. Because it's not just, okay, what does this mean when we close this pre-seed round today? I look at, if we're starting on this track of dilution today, and this is what we're raising at, what does this company look like if we model your ownership out to like a Series E round, for example? And those are the questions that I'm more focused on, less than what does the reality of today look like? Because, at the end of the day, this company is going to take about, 5, 7, 10 years to kind of get over the line, is kind of the typical life cycle of a tech company. And so dilution is a really important thing that sometimes people think, well, I'm not going to sell this business for another 7 years. I'll just raise whatever I need to raise now on whatever terms I need to, just to get the money in the door, and then we'll figure out, the problem later on if there is one. And sometimes I accept that's a valid way to approach this. If you've got, this is the only option. It's either take this $200,000 at a low valuation and live to fight another day, or there's no other money coming in and the company's just done. I get that you have to be pragmatic about that stuff, but my only advice to people is to make sure that you're at least turning your mind to the numbers. I'm a numbers guy when I think about my practice, both from a data and a actual like ownership, et cetera, perspective. And so the numbers are the things that I always start with before I even put pen to paper. And I encourage founders to do that too.
AI is a trendy topic.
Yeah.
Everyone talk about it. It's disrupting industries. Yep. And the legal field is not an exception, definitely. And there is the potential for AI to definitely reduce the costs, speed up, make everything more efficient.
Yeah.
But where do you see actually the shift happening? And if there are any big consequences for startups using AI now without actually putting lots of thoughts into it?
Yeah, I was dealing with a new client the other day who said, "Hey, I used ChatGPT to draft these terms of use, and I'm wondering if you guys can take a look at it." I actually thought that was pretty cool, and so I think that there's a lot of ways that startups can leverage AI to support their businesses, both from a legal perspective, but also on the business side. You think about code, writing code, and a bunch of other things. I think there's lots of application there. I think the key, in the legal space, so Osler's already using AI. We've been doing so for a while. We use it in the context of due diligence. We have like basically Osler ChatGPT bot that we have internally. We're working on a few other things as well, but we're certainly pushing the limits on our end too to understand how we can leverage AI. It's a super powerful tool that can bring a ton of efficiency to what we do. I think it'll be important in the legal industry to kind of smooth out and simplify some of the more high-touch, low-value things that we do as lawyers. And I think that's to the benefit of clients and a good outcome for everyone. I think, at least in the short term, what will still exist is the more strategic advisory side of what law firms do. But I think the biggest risk, they're well known. People talk about concerns relating to AI all the time. I think for me, to add something that's a bit novel into it, that we don't always talk about is, I just hope we don't lose our humanity in all of this stuff. I think that the use and leverage of AI, and I use it as well, is super important. And I think that our clients deserve our adoption of AI in a way that, makes us more efficient and better supports them. It's on us to always be upping the limit in terms of what we're able to do for clients. And so we owe it to them to adopt AI. But I think we just want to make sure that we don't lose, again, our humanity in that. We don't want to lose the kind of personal touch, the knowledge of the business, of the client, the friendship that we have, all that stuff. Like, we don't want to just automate everything where you're essentially interacting with a vending machine. And would be my concern.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's come back to Calgary startup ecosystem. So this is the question that everyone asks, right? Because I just want to know more about it.
Yep.
Why Calgary? Why startups should start here? What kind of support is available?
Yeah.
What's unique about Calgary?
Yeah. Why not Calgary, I guess, right?
Yes.
I think so I've been here now for 2 years, a little over 2 years. And outside of work and my career and everything, the thing that my family and I just love about being here is the skiing and the cycling. It's world class. And, coming from Toronto, the nearest ski hill was a couple of hours away, and you had to, fight to be able to ride the bike in the city. It was pretty challenging. It was a lot of 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. rides to make sure we were riding when there wasn't a bunch of traffic when we were riding in the city during the week. And so everything is just on another level from that perspective. So that's kind of the lifestyle side of things. And there's still, some great shopping, good restaurants, things to do on the weekend. So from that perspective, it's great. On the work side and from a community point of view, the ecosystem is just growing like gangbusters here. And that's just an exciting, energizing thing to be a part of. In terms of why it's happening here, I would say you've got tremendous amounts of talent. You've got, again, as I alluded to earlier, a great lifestyle, good work-life balance. The cost of living is great. And you've got some just incredible tech companies that have set up in the city that have really become anchors for the community. And then on top of that, I think you've really seen the ecosystem start to really put its weight behind building, and other members of the community similarly doing that. And when I say other members of the community, I mean, other industries, government, etc. And that has really just coalesced in the makings of just a really vibrant ecosystem. And so, you kind of fast forward from even a couple of years ago, you've got some really awesome accelerators. You've got, Startup TNT has, grown to just like exponential levels from where it was even 2 years ago when I got here, with an actual formal venture fund and everything, going from really just a casual drinks night on Thursday nights, which is pretty incredible. And so you've got organizations like Avatar now, you've got, venture funds like Tallgrass and, Thin Air Labs being, one of the most active VCs in this country. And so you've got people actually doing the work and stepping up and saying, hey, I'm going to create something new here, and I'm going to leave my mark as well in building this ecosystem. And so I think that's part of why it's Calgary. And I think the only other thing I'll add is in Alberta is awesome for this, but people are just so incredibly open and welcoming. I came here not knowing a ton of people, and I had never once had someone say, no, I don't want to meet for coffee, or not respond. And that's not to say that something's going to come out of every interaction you have with people, and that should never be the expectation, in fairness. But people are just open, they want to collaborate, and they're happy to welcome you here. So I think that kind of collaboration and openness is, on top of all the stuff I mentioned earlier, I think is just the secret sauce that, makes all those gears start to churn, from my perspective.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm still new to Alberta as well, and I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Community is extremely
I'm so happy
open,
to hear that.
and I feel welcome, and it's easier to reach out to people. People again, happy to grab coffee and chat and share. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Michael, before we wrap it up, I would love you to give a couple of advice from legal point of view to entrepreneurs that are starting out.
Yeah. So, and I've given this advice before to people, but I would say a good thing to think about is build community around you. We just finished talking about how open and collaborative people are. Get out there, meet people, build the kind of village around your business, because I think that's such a key ingredient to the kind of future longevity and success of whatever you're building. And I mean, I could talk about things like sales and IP and all that other stuff, but I think the real key is, build the community around you. And I would also say, make sure as a founder, you kind of never lose sight of the kind of building of yourself as a founder. And, it's understandable that the focus is usually the business and the product. There's kind of this emerging mindset, including you've got venture funds like Staircase Ventures, for example, that their focus is supporting, as much as they support the business, supporting the founder and the founder's journey and evolution. And I think that's such an important thing to not lose sight of, is that yes, you're building a product, yes, you're trying to sell a product, yes, you're building a team, but don't lose sight of like the you building element of all of this. Because people will say that they'd rather invest in a bad business with great founders over a great business with bad founders. So I wouldn't lose track of that with 2 pieces of advice.
Perfect. These are great pieces of advice. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time. Thank you so much for your sharing. It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
And I look forward to new great cases where Osler going to be driving the success of those companies.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for the ride.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.